my name is Trish and welcome to another Annalee Labor's Speak Out podcast. In these regular chats, we consider and debate the issues that affect us in our local branch, because it affects our state and our communities as well. Today, we're speaking about what it really means in the lead up to the election, the policy issues. Last podcast, we spoke about what people could do. But in the branch, we've had many people ask us about policy messaging and what they need to know and think about when they are talking to people in their communities and in their families. So with me today is Julian and Peter, wonderful people who are very active in our branch. And for me, they're very interesting and intriguing and really inspiring in what they do. So welcome, Julian, and welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Julian.
Great to be here.
Wonderful. So what I'd like to do is start with you, Julian, and pick your brain about what's important for you. We had a chat this morning over coffee with a couple of branch members, and that was a fabulous conversation. And there were things there that really canvassed a range of things around policies around planet, people and profit. But what motivates you to work in the Labor Party and particularly in the lead up to this election? What's important, do you think?
Well, for me, not to sound too cliched about it, but for me, the contrast between the socially progressive agenda of the Labor Party and the complete lack of interest by the LNP could not be starker. So I guess for me, what's really important is continuing some of those quiet, progressive reforms that have been started and that have been in play over several Labor governments. So that's probably what's important for me and what drives me to continue to campaign for ALP members and an ALP government.
And Julie, tell me a bit more about that. We often use those terms, socially progressive, but what do you think are the characteristics of a socially progressive policy? Certainly something that our branch does support.
Yeah, well, I think for me, a good example for me is gender diversity and diversity in general. I work as a Queensland public servant. In my office at the moment is a little lanyard that hangs above my desk saying proud at work, LGBTIQ+. And that agenda is promoted by the department. It's officially something that is recognised and celebrated, diversity at work, and all that means. And there's a lot of power in that, and in creating a workplace that is a safe workplace. Now, my experience under the previous government, the Newman government, was, we had campaigns like, dress up, not down. There were actually posters produced because the Director General at the time felt that the dress standard wasn't as high. Now, that was made a priority as against what's happened in the last few years, even in the 2 years that I was out of the country. So the Labor government's been in now for almost five years, beginning of 2015. So even in the 2 years I was away, there was this big shift, at least in the public sector, where we were made to feel where workplaces were explicitly promoted as safe places to be for everyone. And it's that kind of change that makes a difference to people's life and the way they feel about when they go about their business every day. I think that is important. And that, I think, is an example of what continues to motivate me to support ALP candidates and a progressive government.
Yeah, that's interesting, Julian, because I think what you've pointed out for me, and I'll bring Pete in here, but that issue about what is important. So address standard policy versus policies around safety and security for employment as a contrast between the policies. There's a lack of depth there and a focus on the look and feel of the public service or the economics. And Pete, would you say that that was something that raises your ire or is something that, in terms of what you're interested in, is of great importance to you, that lack of depth from the opposition?
Yeah, my sentiment is quite similar to Julian's, and that's probably no surprise because I think many of us in the branch that we belong to come from a more social perspective. But a couple of things. So I joined the Labor Party after the 2013 federal election loss and after the 2012 state election loss to the Newman government. And I was just incensed at the way in which that government unceremoniously strolled through society and picked fights with people. They picked fights with police officers. They picked fights with the lawyers and the judiciary. They picked fights with nurses, doctors, teachers. They picked fights with my community, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, intersex, queer community, because, you know, God forbid we'd been granted the right to have civil unions under the previous Labor government. And it just brought everything to the table for me. It made me realize at that point that the thing that drives me is that government has a role in making people's lives better. That's what government should be doing. Government should be about investing in people. And I think we've actually seen this writ large this year with the global pandemic, because lo and behold, we have a state government that's actually allowed evidence-based policy to guide it through the pandemic. And we have all but suppressed the virus in this state because we let policy be formed by evidence. And that policy was designed to protect people, because the theory was that if you protect people, then you have an economy. And I think through the neoliberal agenda, we have actually put the economy above people. But the truth is, it's people who make an economy. And that's what Labor does.
Yes,
that's what Labor governments do.
It's a fantastic point, I think. And our colleague Gabrielle has joined us now, and I'll introduce her and bring her in a moment as well. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Thanks.
And
Trish,
yes, go, Gabrielle.
I just said thanks.
That's fine. In terms of I've been speaking with you, Gabrielle, too, and you've been in the party for quite a long time, working very hard on different agendas and policies over the decades. And I know in talking with you as well, you, picking up on Pete's point, have a very clear focus on putting people first in that balance of planet, people and profit. Tell us about your interests in this election, the policies that are really near and dear to your heart.
Well, as far as I can see, without a Labor government, specifically a Labor government, we're going to go backwards on so many areas, because the alternative isn't a mythical Greens Labor coalition. The alternative is the LNP. And as far if we have to repeat that experience of a Newman government again, those people are a mix of fundamentalist Christians, neoliberal economists, and people who just believe that they're right because they're in small business. Or mining company adherents. And to me, that's the last thing that people in Queensland need. And what we actually need is a lot more spending on housing and on helping people to stand up again and survive through the coming recession. So nobody but a Labor government is going to use the government to intervene in the economy in the way that we absolutely need.
And I agree, and I think that picks up on the theme that seems to be forming through this conversation, that we need to focus, our policies, Labor policies do and should focus on how we support people. How do we give people healthy, wealthy lives that may not necessarily always focus on the economic policies. But of course, all those things you mentioned, Gabrielle, form a fabric for economic prosperity, which is important. And Julian, I'll bring you back in here. In terms of that balance and economic policies, what should we be putting up as a branch? What are we focused on in influencing our Queensland Labor colleagues in making sure that that prosperity aspect does feed into people's social and welfare health as well?
Well, I think, for me, I mean, you made the point before, so did Gabrielle. Well, I think everyone's made it in different ways, and that is without people and without healthy people, there is no economy. So if we're about wealth, it has to be, there has to be some kind of, and long-term wealth, there has to be a sustainable environment. There has to be a physically and mentally healthy and empowered population at all levels. So the kinds of individual policies then that you would have need to focus on a strong health sector, a strong education sector.
Yes.
The classic, I mean, the classical stuff. So for me, this dichotomy between economic policy and social policy is a bit of a false dichotomy, because you cannot, unless you build up, to use your term, a strong fabric, a strong education system, a strong health system that enables, I don't like that word, but I think it's useful, that enables these things to happen, that enables good health, that enables a sustainable environment. Nothing else can happen. So for me, it's finding, it's identifying those current policy gaps and, so for example, the conversation this morning around mental health, there was, a gap identified in terms of the services that apply to young people. Now, if you don't, to be crude, plug that gap, then we lose those people to society, and we have a weaker society and a weaker economy. So I guess the question is, for me, the question is the same.
Yes, and I think that picks up on Peter's point earlier around, and I'll bring you back in again here, Pete, in terms of how through the pandemic management, this government has really listened to the right advice and listened to science and data to craft some of the responses to that. How do you think they might take that success into this election and hopefully into the next 4 years around certain policies?
There's one thing that I can't stand, and that's political jargon.
Yes.
And something that sent a complete shiver up my spine was when we were hearing about this unite and recover slogan, because it's a totally meaningless and pointless form of words.
We've had lots of feedback about that, haven't we? That it's not exactly something people have bonded with.
No, but the point of it is, if you think about that, the unite bit is the social bit. And we have done a fabulous job in this state of uniting. We've all made sacrifices. You know, I've sacrificed aspects of my own business to be able to provide a COVID safe environment. We've all not visited our elderly parents when we wished we could have. We've all not gone to birthday parties. You know, we have all made significant sacrifices, and we've done that in the spirit of knowing that to stop the advancement of the virus, you have to starve it of a vector, and human beings are the vector. So, you know, we've done what we needed to do, but within that is the seeds of the recovery. You know, we've actually already figured out a model for how we recover, and that is by putting people at the center. We've already been doing it. Maybe people haven't realized it, but we have had a social policy led, or social policy, health policy led trajectory through the virus. The virus is still there. It hasn't gone, but we are now in a position where we can rebuild businesses, we can rebuild communities, we can rebuild families, and that's the recovery bit. So there's absolutely no way that you can separate people from the economics of recovery, because the economics of recovery is predicated on the people. So I'm heartened, I think, that the government seems to be reframing this discussion as we step into the official election campaign, which I think will start on the 6th of October. And we're starting to see that the next step of this, you know, is that, well, okay, we've just got to learn to live with this virus, but because we've witnessed health policy working so well for us. We've had outbreaks, and we have seen how the process of contact tracing works. We have seen how they can shut a virus down very quickly to within a community, and they can isolate it, and they can remove vulnerable people out of the mainstream to contain it. That's exactly how it needs to work, and that requires people to unite to do that. But it also then promotes a recovery, because the rest of society can continue to function while that's happening.
Yes. And I love that phrase you use, the seeds of recovery. I think in Queensland, despite critical feedback from others, there is that. It is heartening. And I guess just throwing to you, Gabrielle, do you share that sentiment? We've got a couple of minutes left before we have to finish for this podcast. But what are your thoughts on, positivity in our policy for the Labor Party in the next couple of weeks and beyond for the next 4 years?
Well, look, what I hope for is more rational, evidence-based policy. I've got great hopes for the whole push for jobs in renewables, and I think we have got a long battle to make sure that we have publicly owned renewables. I think we have the corporation that's meant to be doing it, but I think we've got work to do there. And people like our branch are the ones who drive those policies and who we've got to keep pressure on. We've got to keep our foot on that accelerator. It's really important. We can't get complacent about it. The other thing that's really important to me is housing policy. And because I work in an area where I know that there is a severe shortage of affordable housing for people before we even started the pandemic recession. Now that we're heading or hurtling towards what could possibly be depression, and people are getting poorer, and significant sectors of our community have got very low incomes, those people simply can't pay rent and eat at the same time. Something will we must be active in that space, and in our local community, those things are going to really come home to bite us very soon. So we have to act.
Yes, I agree, and I think that is certainly the hallmark of our branch. And this morning, and of course this afternoon, we've covered off on a lot of the policies that I think will make that happen. I agree with you. I think we've got a battle on some of those, but we're talking about that combination of planet, people and profit. So people's health, housing, financial support, keeping people healthy and active so that they can engage in the economy. And hopefully we have a focus on renewables into the next couple of years that can make that happen.
Can I just say one more thing, Trish?
Of course.
And I think the thing about Labor, the Labor Party and Labor Party members, is that because what we focus on is getting more and more people to join us so we can have a conversation. So it's about being a mass party and having as many people as we can involved in this process with us. We literally want to walk with others to achieve these things. And I don't know any other political party that wants to do that and that does that.
And that is a beautiful message to end on, I think, for our branch members who'll be listening to this podcast. We want to have activities that connect our people so that they can engage with each other and build understanding, confidence and skills so that we can contribute to state and national policy and actions. So thank you to my guests today, Julian, Peter and Gabrielle. Thank you so much for giving up your time this afternoon. And I hope our members got a lot out of today's podcast and can join me next time for Annerley Branch's Speak Out podcast sessions. This is Trish, and we'll talk with you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish.
Thanks.